right, you guys, welcome back to another episode of the Candid Cox cast, where my friends and I basically talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to rowing and coxing. And very candidly, we have a lot of fun doing it. So today I have a really awesome co-host. I'm really excited to introduce you guys to Fergus Mainland out in the UK. And we've got a lot of cool stuff to cover, especially when I know COVID is going on and, we have a lot of issues at hand with Black Lives Matter. There's a lot going on, but what is actually going on in rowing? So we're going to talk a little bit about rowing and rowing news and what's going on, what we predict, what's happening. So before we dive into all of that, though, if you don't mind, Fergus, just tell us a little bit about who you are and we'll dive into what you're up to, because there's a lot going on.
There is, yeah. So I'm Fergus Mainland. I'm in my third year at Newcastle University in the northeast of England. So one of the big student programs in the UK. I've recently been elected for next season president of the boat club, which is something I'm really excited about and really looking forward to. And I'm also going to be involved next season in the coaching of the women's squad, one of the best women's squads in the country, which I'm proud to say. And again, it's another challenge I'm really looking forward to. But on the side, and it's something that's been going on for a while, I've been involved with Junior Rowing News, one of the biggest media outlets for rowing news in the UK. And it was set up sort of 6 or 7 years ago by Tom Morgan during his final year of studies at school. And he basically decided to write about 15,000 words previewing the National Schools Regatta in the UK rather than writing his A-levels. And that was the birth of Junior Rowing News. And it's grown massively over the past few years. And we get about 100,000 people reading, 100,000 views of our content every year. And we're involved with the boat race, we're involved with Henley Royal Regatta. And our latest venture that we've done is setting up the End of the Island podcast, basically trying to continue this content during this lockdown coronavirus period whilst all the racing's drying up.
That's awesome. And so much going on. I mean, I know just from running this podcast that even just one podcast is a lot of work. So you must be busy.
We are actually. For a time when there's no racing, we're actually doing quite a lot. And I'm speaking to, there's 4 of us on the editorial team for Junior Rowing News, and we're in touch more than ever, actually. Setting up guests, trying to find stories, and trying to find guest hosts for the podcast as well. So we're busy, which is nice, and we're trying to do our part to keep sort of the conversation going throughout lockdown period. Yeah.
That's awesome. And before we kind of dive into the podcast and Junior Rowing News a little bit, what kinds of stuff are you doing at Newcastle? So you're coaching, but aren't you also doing some other broadcasting?
Well, so last summer, it's sort of a long story, but in my second year, I got glandular fever over Christmas. So that basically stopped my rowing for a considerable period of time. And I wanted to stay involved with the sport as much as possible. So I helped out with the men's squad leading up sort of through the summer events. But I also started to get into commentary at the University Championships, Bucks Regatta, and then carried on throughout. So I did various the British Championships, the juniors and the masters, and then carried on through Henley Women's Regatta and the Home International Regatta as well. So that's just sort of another side of the rowing world that I wasn't actually aware of or fully appreciated whilst I was rowing as a junior or in my early stages at university. So I've got that on the side as well to keep me busy. Yeah.
Now, I also do commentary sometimes. I tend to do more broadcasting. So I do broadcasting for like Head of the Charles Regatta. I did it with James Cracknell at Henley last year. And do you find that commentary is very different actually than broadcasting or journalism?
Well, I think I've done sort of 3 different styles. I've done sort of in the tower, in the sort of finished tower at some of the championships, and I've done it on the back of the launches at Henley Women's Regatta, which I think was the most fun out of all of it, actually. Sort of right behind all the racing, following it, sort of right on top of the action almost, which I thought was great fun. But I've also done some of the live stream as well, which I find the most difficult out of the 3 because it's a constant stream of information and facts that you're trying to keep as interesting as possible for sort of an hour or so, or however long you're on the broadcast for.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I know when I do commentary at the Charles, sometimes it's like it's just I think it kind of a different skill set.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of fun. Is there one that you actually enjoy a little bit more? Do you want to start doing more commentary, or
I think it's definitely something I've loved. I really enjoy doing, and that I want to try and keep involved with as much as possible over the next few years. I was down actually in London at the National Junior Indoor Rowing Championships, which was completely different because it's all on the rowing machines, which was a whole new kettle of fish. Rather than being side by side, it's going around and you're sort of really up close and personal with all the juniors who are racing, which was great fun. And they did it out at the Olympic site for the 2012 games, and it was in where they had the basketball courts. So we had all the kids sitting up in the stands all around. So there was so much noise and there was such a good atmosphere. And it's something completely different to the 2,000 meter racing or the Finnish tower commentary that I've been used to.
Yeah, that's so cool. That sounds really exciting, but also kind of a different challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's quite fun is it's the same people that you get to meet at all these events, and it's the volunteers that make these events, whether it be Bucks events or British rowing. It's the same faces that you see, and they're always really friendly faces, always keen to help out, and it just adds a really nice dimension to it. All these friendly faces. Yeah.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about how you got into junior rowing news a little bit. So how did that happen originally?
So it was in my final year of school. And it was the desperate attempt to try and find as many different things to put on your CV for university, your personal statement for university. And I saw the tweet that came out from Junior Rowing News saying they were hiring new writers for the next season. And I thought, oh, that looks quite fun. I'll give it a go and see what happens. So I sent a message in. It was Tom Morgan who got back to me, and yeah, I was going to be involved for the next year. And it's a group of usually 10 or 12 writers, and it's all voluntary. So it's written, the previews are written by rowers who love writing about it for rowers, and then covering the major events throughout the year, whether it be Fours Head, Pairs Head, early on before Christmas, right through Schools Head, national schools, and then the big regattas, Marlow, Wallingford, and then Hen the Women's, Hen the Royal. And then throughout the year, there's loads of other opportunities to get involved, whether it's product testing for our partners, or involved with the boat race, which was where my interest sort of went to the next level almost. And it was down with sort of 3 or 4 others invited to the boat race in Putney, and basically doing the social media for the boat race, whether it was sort of live tweeting the events or writing the race reports afterwards. It was so cool actually. And then you get the free kit involved with the boat race as well. And it's something I've been involved with for a couple of years afterwards as well, because it's so much fun and really good experience for writing, sports journalism, that sort of thing.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
Honestly.
yeah, it is actually. It's
so
really
cool.
good fun.
I mean, the boat race is so fun too. I mean, I was watching from Ariel Kensington, so that was really fun. We were up there with like some of the GB guys, and they had a big viewing party, and the news was there and everything. But man, what I would have done to like be down, like in the action. That's so cool.
It was really good actually. And then so the season at university that I was out with glandular fever, I was able to be far more involved with it. So I could be right from the beginning. I was involved with the official President's Challenge, and then like some of the trial eights, the fixtures, and then the crew announcement and weigh-in, and then Putney Week itself, where all the crews, and then there's media throughout the week leading up to the boat race, and you can just feel the atmosphere building, because they have the main media centres at Thames Rowing Club down at the Putney Embankment, and it just starts to fill up more and more every day. And then they've got the official press moments with them, where they have all the interviews with the coaches and the presidents. And then the boat race day itself is mad, because there's 250, 300,000 people. So you've just got to push your way to get into Putney, and then everyone just decamps up to the finish line up at Chiswick, and then there's the media scrums up there with all those people, and it's a mad day. There's so much going on. It's great to be a part of.
That's so neat. And so, would you say that that's one of your favorite events?
I think it is. I think it is. and just seeing it from so many different angles, seeing how much media preparation there is that actually goes into it, is something you're just not really aware of before you actually get involved with it, which is really good fun. But I think the one I've had the most fun with is Henley Royal, and I've been involved working in the press office for a couple of years now, which was so much fun. I think I spent the weeks basically interviewing all the crews, all the winning crews, whether it be the schoolboys and schoolgirls, right up to the Olympic champions like Mahi Drysdale and whatnot. And yeah, just mixing with the best rowers in the world and then feeding it into reports for Henley Royal Regatta or commentary notes for the YouTube stream and BT Sport. That's probably the most fun I've had at the rowing events. Yeah.
Can't argue with that.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. And so obviously this year, the world is pretty crushed that we're not having a Henley or any rowing at all. Actually, I think we're pretty disappointed about that.
Yeah.
Pretty much losing, just like skip this year. We basically have nothing at all. What are you up to? I mean, how do you have news? What are you following? What are you writing about with no news and no rowing?
Well, I know it's bizarre. We were quite keen as a platform. We were very keen not to just die out and have no content coming out over summer, which is why the first thing we did with Junior Rowing News, we created sort of the COVID-19 site on sort of place on our website. So we send weekly updates of what's going on in politics, if there's updates from the government, but also what's going on with announcements from British Rowing, from World Rowing. And we just put all that in one document on a Monday, 8 a.m. We send that out, and that's sort of the first thing on the week. But we felt we wanted to do more. And early on, we had some articles coming out about there's all sorts of things, ranging from our favorite videos to watch if you're bored to how to keep yourself motivated. But we felt the next step was, in order to keep things going, well, why don't we just launch a podcast? And so we did. And it's amazing how many people are coming forward with stories, or how many people are doing charitable things that want it to be publicized, and that we're more than happy to talk about it, because it's something that we feel the entire rowing world should engage with and know about. So we've had all sorts of people on. We've had interviews with guys in Cambridge University Boat Club. We've had Georgie Grant on from Oxford University, commentators such as Peter O'Hanlon, Sarah Cook, and most recently we've had the president, or this chief executive of FISA, Matt Smith, to discuss World Rowing's response to all of this. So what's been fantastic is everyone we've reached out to has been really keen to get involved and sort of keep the rowing conversation going through this strange period.
Yeah, and so going a little bit deeper into some of that, past just what you're writing about and what you're doing, can you tell us, especially non-UK residents or rowers, what is going on in the UK? I think there's a lot of separation there. We kind of know what's going on here, but like, what are you finding out, or what are you dealing with over there when it comes to rowing?
Well, when it comes to rowing, I was worried where that was going to go, because that could have been a whole can of worms.
Oh, that's a whole. Here too.
Yeah. I think British Rowing, they're very much taking their guidance from the government, and whatever the government says, we do. So early on, back in March, the rowing club shut down because it was the only thing that could happen, and rowing, it ground to a halt effectively. But what we've seen over recent weeks is that people have started to be able to get out in single sculls, and most recently sort of double sculls or pairs if you live within the same household. So at the moment, you can't mix with other people yet, because obviously you just can't social distance in a boat bigger than a single scull. So it's something that's taking a lot of time to get back to normal, and it's going to be a long time till we're back to normal. But British Rowing, they've been quite clear actually, and they've set out loads of different, they've got loads of advice, and they've got a 6-stage plan with the return to rowing. And we sat down last week actually with Andy Parkinson, the CEO of British Rowing, and I think he's cautiously optimistic about the returns, of saying we could have some sort of racing in July, but it will likely be sort of inter-club stuff, and we're not expecting racing to resume for a good couple of months, a good sort of few months down the line.
Yeah. And that would be like small boats only. Are you thinking small boats the rest of the year?
I think it'll likely be small boats because, well, we've heard all sorts of things across the media that we're expecting social distancing to last the rest of the calendar year. And with that, it's just not possible to run a normal head race because it'll be head race season that we'll be into, and it's just not feasible. But I think one of the things that we've noticed at Newcastle is that we've started to host our own Sculler's Head at the beginning of the year, which is a good opportunity to people to get some racing after the summer. And we've got our fingers crossed that we can be one of the first events to be back, and we've got planning underway for it. And as a Sculler's Head, we think it's more likely that this will be able to go ahead. But as with all things, it's 3 months down the line, and we're not going to know what the government or British Rowing are saying until about 3 weeks before.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
We've just got our fingers crossed, and we've just got to see what happens.
That's true. And so for this race that you're talking about, are other people allowed to come race, or is it just universities, or what kind of race are you guys thinking about putting on where you're hoping to be the first?
Well, it's something we actually started a few years ago just as a fundraiser for the boat club. And it's something that we've seen grow over the few years, from juniors, university students, all the way to sort of masters and club rowers. And if it's able to go ahead, we'd love it to be sort of the big return to racing for everyone, and hopefully have a nice big entry for everyone to come and enjoy racing once again.
Yeah. And what are some of your predictions for the end of the year going into 2021? I know we could speculate about this forever, but based on some of the trends that you're seeing, what do you think? I mean, everybody's wondering, like, is 2021 going to be normal?
Well, I think we've got to approach it thinking that there'll be summer racing next year, or there'll be racing going ahead, particularly for the Olympic Games in Tokyo. You've got to assume it's going to go ahead, because I think if everyone was just to stop training at the moment, you wouldn't have a particularly good regatta season next year. It wouldn't be particularly competitive. So I think the way that I think the club should be approaching it is, it comes September, where you've had your usual summer off, you're best just to hit the ground running again with your training, because you just don't know what's going to happen. I think when we spoke to Matt Smith, I think he was saying that he's not expecting things to be back to normal until there's a vaccine. And we know sort of from the media, from the government, that we're not expecting a vaccine for a good few months, sort of maybe into next year. So I do think that there will be racing next year. In what format, I'm not quite sure, but I like to think of myself as an optimist, and I think that come the new calendar year next year, I think we should hopefully be back to normal. Touch wood.
Yeah, that's true. I think we're definitely all hoping that. I know I'm trying to plan my racing schedule as well. I think a lot of it's going to be in Europe and the UK, and you can't really plan anything. You can hope, and I'm kind of doing what you're doing, just banking on these races hopefully happening. But a lot of them, we don't even know if they're going to turn into like U23s. Like Duisburg last year was turned into U23s, and so all of a sudden that wasn't a senior race that you could go to. And so they sort of, Holland Becker did the same thing at one point, made it a World Cup, so you couldn't go to Holland Becker. So, like, do you have any thoughts on like what some of these races might sort of do to make up for the lost year? Are you seeing trends or anything? I
think there's only so much that I think you can do to make up for lost events, because yes, if you think of it selfishly, your event has missed out on income, on racing, and on publicity, but so's everyone else. And I think if you were to try and do more, or try and force yourself into more opportunities in the racing calendar, well, I think that'll detract from everyone else. So I think if you've missed out in 2020, well, it's tough, but there should hopefully be something for everyone in 2021, with the usual racing calendar hopefully going to be in place.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, you got to kind of cut your losses and move on, huh?
Yeah, and I think, I think from our perspective at Newcastle, there's Rutherford Head is in November time, which is sort of one of the biggest head races in the northeast, and we've got crews coming out from London. We sort of welcome University of London, Edinburgh University, most recently Tideway Scullers, and it's a big early season opportunity for crews to test themselves, and it's sort of one of the highlights of our winter training at Newcastle, and it's one that we've got our fingers crossed for because we also have a big alumni dinner afterwards as well. And with the loss of our dinner after Head of the River and then barbecue at Henley, I think if it goes ahead, we're expecting sort of over 200 people, students and alumni, to be in attendance at this dinner. And we'd all really like it to be able to go ahead. But again, it just comes down to social distancing and whatnot.
Oh my gosh. I know the social distancing is a nightmare. Oh my gosh. I know. I mean, I know we have to do it, but it sure ruins things. I mean, as a coxswain too, you know, there's not a lot of light at the end of the tunnel for even getting in a boat for a long time.
No, and I think that's the thing. It'll be singles and then start with pairs and doubles within your own household if you live with other rowers, and then slowly building up. But yeah, I think it'll be a while before we're out in 4s, 8s and quads.
Yeah, I think so too. And so what kinds of stories are you following on your podcast and in your news? Like, is there anything that kind of stands out in particular that is new? I mean, everyone should go listen to your podcast at the end of the island. And we'll talk about that as well a little bit later, and you can pitch that. But is there any particular type of story that is standing out to you or that you guys are hearing a lot about?
I think the way we go about finding interviews or finding stories is we just have a look on social media, see what people are talking about, whether it's virtual racing events, because early on when all the racing was cancelled, that was sort of the big things of our podcast. We're talking about some of the virtual events that are going on, or charity fundraisers. So that was a good starting point for us. And then the stories almost came out of the interviews that we're doing. So all the guests we've had come on have had loads of different things to talk about, and that sort of paved the way for conversations sort of in the second half of the episode, which has been really exciting because we've had, I think, about 9 or 10 episodes now, and we've had 10 weeks of different stuff, which has been really great for us, which has kept our content fresh over the weeks. Now,
are the episodes more news stories, or are you going to just talk to certain people and just kind of interview them just generally about what they do? Like, would this be a good news outlet for like Americans like myself to go to and kind of find out like what's going on in UK news?
Yeah, I think so. I think had this not been coronavirus lockdown period, the way I think we'd envisage it doing is we'd talk about the weekend's racing, what's going on, who are the crews to look out for, and sort of stories that are breaking during the week. Sort of continuing what we do on Junior Rowing News, or the previews of races, but just turn it into a podcast really. And the way we like to do it is we like to have a guest interview on sort of the headline name for the episode. But what we've also tried to do is bring in guests for the recording as well, so they can offer their insight as well, because we're the best will in the world. So the four of us, myself, Tom, Will and Ed, we know some stuff, we don't know everything, which is why for sort of our national schools preview, our national schools special episode that we had loads of different voices coming in, whether it was junior rowers, guys who had raced there, we had mums who had raced there, who had been spectators there, and we had people from the organising committee. So we want to keep it as fresh as possible, so it's not just the four of us droning on about our rowing tales, but actually engaging the wider community to keep them as involved as possible. And it is something that we hopefully are able to transmit, not just in the UK, but across Europe, America, Australia, New Zealand as well. So they're engaged and they're up to date with what's going on in the UK, but also giving our perspective on stuff that's happening around the world as well.
Well, that sounds really cool. And I'm assuming that even though it's a fairly new show, it's going pretty well.
Yeah, it is actually. We've been really happy with the numbers who are listening, and it's something we've noticed is just growing week on week as more people hear about it, more people listen to it, and we've noticed far more people actually engaging with us as well, which has been fantastic.
That's so cool. Well, congratulations certainly on
Thanks.
starting your show. I'm glad it's off to a running start. That's awesome. So for us foreigners who are not in the UK, obviously I spent a year in the UK, so I actually got to do some of these races and go to the boat race and do some of the ones that you were talking about. And I actually looked at Newcastle for a grad program, so
Okay.
I didn't end up going there, but I think, obviously Newcastle has an amazing reputation for rowing, and you must just be thrilled that you get to coach as well.
I am. I think one of the reasons I chose Newcastle as a junior, sort of looking for universities, was the rowing. And I had a friend who was a couple of years above me at school. He'd gone there, and he just had so much fun there. I think the program had done wonders for his rowing, and it's just a fantastic city to study in, and it's a fantastic program to be a part of. And I think it's not like other high performance programs. I think it's something that Angelo Savarino, the head coach, has really built up over the past 15 years or so. And it's one that we don't have ergo standards. We really do welcome everyone from across the country and across the world. And what you find is it's a really close-knit group of people. So we'll live together, we'll train together and socialize with each other. And we just have a really good time. And it's not like other programs in the UK. Angelo he's got his Italian spin on it, and it's a tough program. But I think that's what separates us from other programs in the UK, is that it's a tough program, and come summer racing, that really shows off and pays dividends.
Now, the cool thing, maybe you can speak to this just really quickly, that I think is so cool about a lot of European and UK clubs is that you can actually continue to row for the boat club past your university years. So like for Newcastle, you guys have the Blue Star, right?
Yeah, we do. We've got the Blue Star Club, which is our alumni club, and those guys are fantastic.
Yeah, they're still really good. Like, I'm not talking about like masters rowing who are like putzing around on weekends. Like, these are very fast competitive clubs.
Yeah, I think the Blue Star Club has grown over the past few years, and it's actually developed into a real asset to us, a boat club. And they've now got charitable status, and they've got real fundraising efforts going on to support the boat club. And over the past couple of years, we've had boats donated by the Blue Star Club. And it's just so special for us still at university to see these boats with stickers on them saying donated by the Blue Star Club. And it really adds to the feel and the atmosphere at the boat club. But yeah, it's fantastic. These guys still want to race for Newcastle University afterwards. So at last year's Head of the Charles, we had 2 men's 8s and 1 women's 8s go over and race in the alumni 8s, and they had a fantastic time. Yeah, they had a really good time in Boston, and I think we were the only university to actually send alumni over to it, which was really great for us. And they keep racing throughout the year, whether it's at Henley T&V in August, or they all come back up for Rutherford Head and race against the alumni from University of London and Durham. And it's great to have them still involved with the club and to meet up with them at dinners and stuff. And there's people you won't actually have raced with at university. You just know them from the dinners, and they become really good friends.
That's really cool. And we certainly have alum events here in the US, but like once you're part of the university, like you're kicked out. Like you're you're pretty much done. Like obviously you get, people will put alum boats together and stuff for later, but it's a very separate thing. It's you can't like race for the university and the club. But I think it's so cool. You guys can do that.
I think it is as well. And for events like Head of the River and Women's Head, we can also welcome back people who still have Newcastle University Boat Club as their club. So the likes of James Rudkin, who's in the senior team, he comes back and he raced the Head. I think it was 2018 or 19. He came back, he raced with the first 8 because the senior athletes in the GB squad are able to do that, go back and represent their own clubs. So it was great to have him come and train in Newcastle with us for a few days before heading down to London to race Head of the River. And it's really, I think it's really good. I think it's really good for the freshers actually to have this interaction with these high-profile guys who have raced at the university and gone on to do great things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, before we kind of wrap up a little bit, is there anything else that you can see like coming up that's kind of exciting on the horizon that's new and noteworthy in the UK that we should watch out for?
Well, I think the big thing at the moment will be the British Rowing Virtual Championships. And this is something that's coming up at the end of June, and they're hoping to run sort of real time. Something they're hoping to have commentary with as well, real time on the Concept 2s, of really bringing together some sort of culmination of the sort of the summer racing period that we haven't really had. So that's definitely something to look forward to. And I think for all UK rowers, it's just going to be listening out to British rowing, listening out to the government, and seeing what the latest developments will be in terms of returning to racing, returning to training. And I think once we're able to do that, I think we'll get it back into the swing of things nice and quickly.
Absolutely. And for Americans, I know a lot of times it's either too expensive or it's very hard to go race in Europe and the UK. And a lot of American clubs and teams don't get the opportunity to go race internationally. Some do, like some will go to Henley, you'll see Washington, Harvard, some of those clubs that do get to make the trip over for maybe one race. But what would you say are some of the maybe race highlights that Americans should maybe, or foreigners, doesn't have to be American, should keep an eye out for and maybe might be worth making the trip out for?
Well, I think the first one off the blocks would be Henley Royal. I think it's going to be on the bucket list for anyone who rows. They want to come and race there. But I think in terms of head races, definitely women's head of the river on the boat race course backwards down in London is fantastic. So over 300 crews racing there, which is awesome. But I think going through the rest of the calendar year, just to come and watch, you've got sort of the bumps races at Oxford and Cambridge, which is a whole different event. So that's definitely something to go and watch. But to be honest, I think any event you'll go to in the UK, there'll be a high standard of competition, because I think club rowing in the UK is so alive and it's doing so well. And I think it really is leading the world, actually, UK club rowing. So regardless of whatever event you go to, whether it's a head race in winter or a summer regatta, you'll get a really high standard of racing at any point in the country.
I think that's a really good tip and really fun. I mean, they are really fun. The parties that surround these events and the viewing and the PIMS and like there's the walking around, and there's so much to do at these regattas. And so I guess races for you. Regattas are a little different in the UK. We call all boat races here regattas, basically. So Head of Charles is a regatta, even though it's not a race. So I know that's a distinction that, in the UK, you guys they're either heads or regattas.
Yeah, heads, yeah. But I think there's always something going on, and particularly when you get to summer, there's probably 2 or 3 events going on every single weekend. So there's endless possibilities for racing, which only adds to the competition as you get closer and closer to Henley Women's, Marlow Regatta, Henley Royal, which is fantastic for competition. Absolutely.
Well, I will certainly be there racing.
Racing, socializing, drinking. Yeah, I'll be there. Yeah.
Absolutely. Hopefully doing some commentary again as well. Yeah. Well, more broadcasting. I want to be, I won't be doing the commentary. I'll probably be doing some of the broadcasting. But so please tell us where we can kind of follow what you guys are doing, the podcast, Junior Rowing News, all the things that you are up to. Where can we send people?
So the best place to go, first place would be our website, Junior Rowing News. But you can find the podcast, the End of the Island podcast, on Spotify, Apple, Google, basically all good podcasting sites. And just on Twitter, on social, on Instagram at Junior Rowing News. Just keep an ear out, keep an eye out, and because we've got content coming out all summer, and we've got some really exciting stuff over the next few weeks that we're really excited to produce.
Well, that's really exciting. Again, congratulations, and thank you so much for your time today, just kind of updating us. I know a lot of us over here, I will speak for myself and maybe some Americans, that we don't always hear, what's going on. We're so worried about what's going on here that it's interesting to learn more about what's going on in other countries. So I highly recommend that people go to your podcast, go to your sites, stay updated. There's a lot going on. In the UK, they're always up to something rowing, and it's really fun. It's really exciting. Before we just sign off here, is there anything else that you can think of that you want to tell us, or that's exciting that's coming up, or any last minute?
I probably can't give too much away, but I think, follow the podcast, find exciting. Us on. We've got some really great stuff, and we've got some good stuff for what would have been Henley Royal Regatta and content before then. So, find us on Spotify, on Google and Apple at the end of the island, and get involved, because that's what we want to do. We want to keep the conversation going whilst there's no racing happening at the moment.
That's awesome. Well, thank you again so much for your time. I really
thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. And for everyone else, I will put all of this information again in the show notes. So again, feel free to write to me at Iron Will Wit or the Candid Cox on Instagram. And we will definitely put a lot of links and send everyone over to the End of the Island and Junior Rowing News, because you guys are up to some really cool things. So for everyone else that is listening, thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you next week.